And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So in this week's episode, or in this week's live stream, we'll be talking about things that have happened in the past week or so. So first is we'll be talking about the Billionaires Tax. Now, obviously, government tax the people to generate revenue to support, a country or to sustain oneself. Now, obviously, in over the course of years, decades, and so forth, only a certain few small percentage of the population tends to get the most wealth or the highest wealth, you call it, and call them billionaire, so to speak. And obviously that may seem unfair if you look at it, especially if you're on the opposite spectrum of the billionaires category, so to speak. Anyway, what does the government does is take advantage of that wealth and tax them to the fullest. Now, obviously, its intention is to mitigate the increase or expansion of their wealth so that a majority could benefit from it. Well, that's the idea here. Anyway, obviously, if you're one of those few people that you call a billionaire are affected here, is you will not be too glad to hear about this. And does it do what its intention is? And in the case of the billionaires tax, tends to be counterproductive. You think about it, and not just that, you have people speaking up, like in the case for Mr. Elon Musk regarding the issue here, which is a hot button here. And what's interesting here with regards to his argument as to why they shouldn't be taxed, or he has plans on where those tax should be invested on. We'll go into the detail. Anyway, related to Mr. Elon Musk's company, which is Tesla. Now, Tesla has been growing by leaps and bounds in terms of popularity and demand here. And obviously, there are still limitations as to what Tesla could do, since one of its restriction is its price point. It's kind of expensive if you think about it. So it's not appealing to the mass consumption here or consumer here. And they have plans of making that reachable here. Now, how fast can they do that? Given all the problems that Tesla is encountering in their product as well as their software component, we'll have to wait and see. Next, we'll be also talking about, cyber attacks is on the rise now, and even Microsoft has stated in that a particular article that it's on the rise and has attacked several companies here. And what's led to this sudden shift or increase? We'll talk about that. And next, we'll be talking about the plan from Rockstar to launch the I would say a new game, but a rehash of a very popular game, the GTA series, or the Trilogy that they're calling it, the GTA 3, which I've played, which I haven't finished, I think, when I think about it. And then you have the Vice City I've played, I haven't finished also, and then the San Andreas, which I haven't played also. But anyway, so is it a good strategy that Rockstar is betting that people will feel the nostalgia in playing those games? And finally, continuing with, in terms of gaming, obviously to play those top tier games or AAA games, you need a console or a desktop PC to be able to do that. And one of the main issues is if your console gets if it's broken or there's any issue, you have limited choice as to what you can do to get it fixed. And the arguments from those manufacturing company is, if you get it fixed, it's considered illegal because of not just the hardware component but as well as the software component, which is kind of confusing, and it's not, you would say, consumer friendly here if you think about it. So now the courts in the United States has made it legal so that when you buy something, you should be able to get it fixed at no extra cost, but shouldn't be a big hassle, as some companies have tried to make it more difficult, to get you to buy a brand new product rather than get it fixed in the first place. Anyway, so regarding the billionaires tax, as I mentioned earlier. So the purpose of taxing people, in this case even the rich are getting richer, and the gap between the ultra wealthy and the ultra poor is getting bigger by the minute, by the day, and so forth. So what does the government do? Obviously, to mitigate that gap, is to tax those who are doing really well, which is kind of has its flaws if you think about it. But obviously, the intended here goal is to tax the rich, so that the tax that they generate could be redistributed, so that the majority could benefit for it tremendously, which I think it's a noble idea. But obviously, it has its flaws, right? No law or ideas has its flaws. But anyway, so according to businessinsiders.com, one of the critics here regarding criticizing the billionaires tax, you have Mr. Elon Musk, one of the richest persons in the world, which owns Tesla, which we'll be talking about in a bit, mentioned that the billionaires tax is not ideal, and that the tax that he will be taxed with, he has plans to use it, and guess what he plans to use it with, so to speak, is to use that money to go to Mars. Now, it's a great idea. That's why Elon Musk is not in politics, because obviously you have to think of the better good of the majority rather than a small select group. And unless the Earth is dying, that we need to colonize other planets and go live another planet, so to speak. It's kind of, I would say, useless, but it has long-term ramification. But obviously, as of the present, asking, telling, one of his great ideas, that using those money to focus on, I would say, less trivial, but obviously there are more important aspects that, taxes should go to, healthcare, education, help run the country, and hopefully help other citizens who are less advantaged, so to speak. Anyway, so in the article, if you were to look closely, obviously this has gotten a lot of scrutiny, yeah, you would say, with regards to those who will be significantly affected with the billionaires tax. And obviously, there are a lot of billionaires out there, and compared to the majority, the billionaires are still the minority rather than the majority here. But obviously, if you're one of those people who's significantly affected, there are unintended consequences. Just like if you think about not just Elon Musk, you have Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. Are they really getting taxed to the fullest if you think about it? And one of those unintended consequences, people like billionaires like them always try to find ways to circumvent the process, which is to no fault of theirs. Obviously, it's their right to find ways. If there's loopholes, they should take advantage. And one of the ways that they try to skirt those taxations per se is by using their company, their corporation, to levy, or to use their shares, so to speak, so that unless they cash out their shares, the value of their shares, it will not be taxed. And if it's established in other regions, or in this case, let's say Facebook's operation is in outside of the United States, there's very little to no tax that's going to be levied on their on the individual level, which seems kind of unfair if you think about it. And obviously, the people who work within those companies are still being taxed. That's why there's a dilemma here. Obviously, those companies provide a lot of employment for a lot of people. That's why governments are encouraging companies to invest in their particular cities or states and so forth. But obviously, at the end of the day, the intention of the billionaires tax, does it get the result that it desires? Now, obviously, what I found it funny that Mr. Elon Musk's goal here is they shouldn't be taxed, and if they're going to be taxed, they would use that money for something more ideal here. Now, obviously, it's a bit unrealistic if you think about it. And can it benefit the majority here? Now, if they were to invest in technology, let's say improve AI, then that's a different discussion here. But still, it's kind of iffy if you think about it. And obviously, how bad is it going to affect Mr. Elon Musk here? And you can see here the proposed billionaires tax could cost him not just in terms of millions of dollars but billions of dollars. So 50 billion is a lot of money, and obviously trying to skirt that taxation, can be construed as illegal, but uh, one has to do something about it. Otherwise, you would lose a lot of value. That's why many of those CEOs or billionaires tend not to cash out their shares. That's why they want to hold on for as long as they can, and they will only cash out those shares if they need it for personal gains or necessity, so to speak. And even Elon Musk goes on to say that his plan is to use the money to get humanity to Mars and preserve the light of consciousness. I don't know if there's a sense of urgency that we need to focus on that one, because there are more pressing issues that we need to contend with here on planet Earth. So obviously this is going to affect a lot of people, a lot of billionaire, obviously, and the goal here is to generate that revenue so that can support other projects or plans for the government. Now, obviously, there's going to be debate regarding this. Will it get passed? Who knows? But obviously, the wealthiest are always trying to find ways to, if they can be taxed less. Actually, I think I read an article before where one of the richest person, Mr. Warren Buffett, paid even less tax than his secretary or her secretary. So you can just see that those wealthy people always try to find ways to leverage their position so as to pay the minimum amount of tax, while the rest of us are paying the maximum amount of tax, which is, if you look at it, does it seem fair? And not. That's why the plan, the intention of the billionaires tax is noble, but does it get the result it wants here, as mentioned? So obviously there are two sides to this story here. That's why on the one side, for the benefit of the majority, looks interesting here, looks promising, but on the other side here, for the richest of the rich, it's not looking too good for them. And if you were to look in an example here, Mr. Bezos, one of the richest person, right, who owns Amazon, has a net worth of almost 200 billion. And obviously, if he were to cash it out, he would to pay a handsome amount of money. And in this case, uh, so he owns 10% of that stake. So 10% of 10 billion is around 20 billion. So imagine that 20 billion is tax. So he will lose a lot of money. And obviously, if I were in his place, or knowing about this, he would try to find ways to skirt paying those taxes. And obviously skipping or skipping taxes could be detrimental. Now obviously, I wouldn't say they're trying to evade tax per se, but if it's within the prescribed law, try to find loopholes and such is permissible here. Now whether that's considered ethical or not is a totally different issue here. And obviously that's the ongoing debate here, whether people should not desire people, but is taxing more taxes for the rich or uber rich or the billionaires in this case, would it be beneficial in the long run here, or should there be a cap in terms of how much tax the uber rich should be in a sense penalized, right? So if you're getting more wealthier, meaning there should be a cap in terms of how much you should be taxed. Now, obviously, it's a more complicated situation than one would realize, but the point here is there are always unintended consequences, and obviously the government has to consider those different sides. That will it benefit everyone in the long run here? And if it does, then go for it. But if it does not, then maybe we need to look at other ways to generate revenue. Is it just taxation? Maybe encouraging people to invest more on, I don't know, let's say on businesses or something else, something to help the majority rather than just the minority. Anyway, segueing on Mr. Elon Musk company, which is Tesla. Now, obviously, he's invested in a lot of companies, namely Tesla. Then you have SpaceX, to name a few, and then is it Neuralink is the other company that focuses on the AI part. But anyway, so owning Tesla has been a good adventure for, or great tremendous adventure for Elon Musk, where he started a few decades ago to where he is now. Obviously, they're making leaps and bounds in terms of providing a viable, consumer-friendly electric vehicle, and that their goal is to make it fully autonomous sometime in the future. Now, how realistic is that? It's a totally different question. And obviously, to own a Tesla vehicle has its promise, but the end of the day is it's very quite expensive here, and not many people can afford it, even if they wanted to own one. And obviously, so one of the ways to make it more affordable is to reduce the cost of owning a Tesla vehicle. And one of their goals here, according to the article here, uh, that they plan to roll out a how we say an affordable Tesla vehicle. So as low as 15,000, because generally they would cost in the 20, 30, or even 50,000 range, that $1,000 range. So their goal is to reduce the cost, and obviously to reduce the cost, they need to cut on certain features, so to speak. So just the bare minimum, just like a regular combustible engine here. But the question here is, will it dissuade others from owning a basic entry Tesla vehicle here? But only time can tell. But in this case, their goal is to roll out an affordable vehicle in just a few years time, which is kind of ambitious if you think about it, because as it is right now, they have supply chain issues with regards to meeting demand, producing enough supply to meet the demand. And then you also have the shortage in terms of the chip manufacturing worldwide. So it's not just them that has been significantly impacted, but also other manufacturers as well. So how you solve that dilemma in the short term will benefit you tremendously in the long run here. And if we were to take a closer look, obviously the company now has been valued as $1 trillion company. So it's, they're making a lot of headway here. But still, in terms of experience of, building or selling a successful car company, there's still a long ways compared to other big manufacturing car brands here. Namely, you have Ford, GM Motors, and you have Toyota, Volkswagen, and the likes here. So to bring the price point down, and according to the report, they believe that Tesla could bring the market a vehicle that's worth $15,000 or less, could happen within this decade. Now, how soon can they do that will be the challenge here. Obviously, the scaling of your manufacturing would be the key here. And if you can produce enough vehicles based on demand, you could reduce significantly the cost of every vehicle. And as one would know in operations, that the more that you produce, you reduce the cost of producing that particular product, or in this case, a vehicle here. And but still, one of my apprehension, regardless if it's an expensive EV vehicle or a affordable version of an EV vehicle, one of its limitation, as mentioned, in previous discussions, and in this article as well, is the battery range, the range that an EV vehicle can achieve. Because when it runs out of power, or battery in this case, how are you going to resupply the energy? And unless it can solve that dilemma quickly, in terms of how typically in a gas powered engine, you just go to a gas station and then refuel it for, stay there for a few minutes, then you're on your way. But in an electric powered engine or vehicle, you need time. And if you were to charge it at home, it takes hours. And then if you were to use one of their superchargers, which could cut down the charging time, which is tremendous, but it's still under an hour or so. So until they improve the charging capability or the battery capability, which, a lot of manufacturing firms are making a lot of headway, which I think we discussed Panasonic's introduction of a new, more affordable, more capable battery that can improve the performance of, any devices that uses, a battery, so to speak here. But assuming you get all of those things properly, one of the main issues still is the safety aspect. Obviously, when you're dealing with battery, combined with fire, it's just a disaster that looming around the corner, which is, no one wants to deal with. And if you remember the experience when Samsung released the Note 10, I forget which model, but it caught fire inside an airplane. So you could just imagine the catastrophe that's looming if you're driving a big vehicle that's full of battery, and if that were to catch fire, there should be a fail-safe system so that things like that won't happen and should never happen. And even if you were involved in a car accident, there should be systems upon systems of safety backups that would ensure the safety of the passengers or the people using inside the vehicle here. Now, obviously, compared to other car manufacturers, you still have what do you call this? You still have Tesla as the market leader in terms of EV vehicle. Now, obviously, selling you the idea of what do you call this? Selling you the idea of fully autonomous vehicles is a nice idea, but it's still years and decades away, which is a totally separate discussion. But if they can achieve that goal of being fully autonomous for their vehicles, I think it's going to be a game changer. May not be now, but in the future. So until that time comes, I think they should be focusing on producing a very cost-efficient, safe, reliable electric vehicle, and continue developing the AI capability of the car. And I think that would come eventually. And obviously they're the leaders in doing that because they have the resources to do that. But selling it right now to the consumer, I think, is a dangerous path that they're moving forward. And obviously it's not just outsiders saying this, but also their engineers are saying that Elon Musk is pushing too much in terms of its viability. Now, it's one thing if it's a device that's not that cannot be fatal, that cannot harm an individual fatally, but the fact that you're driving a vehicle is a totally different aspect here, which is, I think, we need to be tread carefully on how we approach technology in these aspects. But who knows? But either way, the point here is, getting the price point is a main hurdle for Tesla here. And if they can reduce the price, make it more safer and reliable, obviously they have to go through the growing pains like how Toyota or Ford started when they started manufacturing vehicles in the first place. And until they reach that threshold, I think there's still a lot of learning, high learning curve that has to happen before they could achieve the ideal or what's best for the company and for the consumers per se here. Anyway, segueing now to cybersecurity. Now, we mentioned earlier that there's been a sudden shift or increase of attacks, cyber attacks, from many multinational companies, not just any company, but big multinational known companies worldwide that has been attacked by several hackers here. And what has led to this? And is it going to continue, and is it going to rise over time? And should we be concerned, whether you own a company, you work for a company, or even as an individual who is reliant on using technology, whether it's through your smartphone devices or desktop or any device that you rely that you have to access, go over to the internet here. Now, according to the article at engadget.com, Microsoft, which has been hacked before, is stating that SolarWinds hackers, so the group of hackers, they're called SolarWinds, may have breached 14 more companies here. So it's kind of alarming because it's getting more bolder and bolder. And looking at literatures in terms of how hackers are using our weaknesses in terms of our behavior or our ignorance on this aspect, obviously they're trying to take advantage of that so that they could get information, not just individual information, but access to your access to the company, so that the company's information can be hijacked, could be locked out, could be ransomed here, so to speak, or ransomware that they're calling it. So let's see here. So one of the known groups, SolarWinds hackers, as mentioned, has hacked more than 14 companies here. So let's take a closer look. So Microsoft, another big multinational company, has shared these details. Meaning, if Microsoft is willing to share those information, it's that detrimental. So obviously, you've seen a lot of external individuals or groups of individuals, whether it's individual citizens or even groups or nations that's trying to penetrate, gain an advantage over another entity here. But anyway, so recent attacks or cyber attacks have been orchestrated by the Russian state sponsored group, and they blamed for last year's devastating SolarWinds hack. Now, the company's cybersecurity expert warned that Nobelium, so it's the name of the group, is again trying to access government and corporate networks around the world. Now, obviously, if they're able to do that successfully, they can cripple not just a company but also an economy here, so to speak, and in particularly the United States, which is obviously has risen to the level that even the president has made it a point to do something about by sanctioning companies, or in this case, government. So in the case, sanctioning Russia over its previous cyber attacks. And there were mentions that with the last election, I think not the last election, but is it the last election where Hillary Clinton and was it Donald Trump? I think there was external manipulation where information were hacked to gain an advantage. Now, whether that's true or not, it's becoming more clear that the activities of hacking behaviors has been becoming more elaborate, more costly, and more punitive in terms of its severity of how it can affect not just the individual level but in a group level as well here. So according to Microsoft, they say that they're using the same strategy that it employed in the successful SolarWinds attack. So targeting companies whose products form core part of global IT system. So what they do here is focus on different aspects of the IT supply chain, looking for vulnerability, so to speak. So they look at resellers, service suppliers that provide cloud services, and other tech. Now, obviously, the goal here is you look for vulnerability so that you can hijack them, so that you can gain entry to their core system. And once they've done that, it's less like an uphill battle. Imagine you're going upstream. It's a very difficult endeavor, but the waterfall that's going down, so it only takes one to make it harder for you. And it's always I won't say a win-win game. It's completely opposite, actually. It only takes one small mistake for the entire system to be compromised here. So you can just imagine the difficulty that companies have to deal with, and that assuming they have the necessary resources to combat it. But based on actual studies, let's say out of 100 companies, only 40 companies, 40% are aware and doing something about those threats. So meaning the 60% of those companies are left vulnerable. So it leaves a big opportunity for those nefarious groups of people. Now, not to say the least with regards to smaller businesses or SMEs, if you think about it. So if big companies are that vulnerable, well, based on another study, only 3% of SMEs are well protected. So it just gives you the severity of its scope, knowing that if I'm a hacker, I'll focus on the most vulnerable, and the SMEs who thinks based on a survey that they're not the likely candidate for being hacked, but obviously by logic they're the easier target, so they would not only target big corporations or big entities, but as well as small and medium scales. So you can just imagine the concerns here if you're looking, if you own a business here. And obviously with the improvement of technology, the usage of technology, the adaptation of technology, and obviously the invention of the internet makes it more easier for people to connect online. But obviously on the downside, it gives you a lot of vulnerabilities on that side. And obviously those hackers are using any form of vulnerabilities, whether it's phishing attacks or using scams, whether it's online or through text or any forms, looking for ways to penetrate your security, and then eventually gaining access to the company or the country's access as well, and it's costing businesses billions of dollars here. So it's not chump change here, and that I think that's going to be the growing trend in the future here. So companies companies that are starting up should also consider how to protect their information or IT security here. It's not just how do you survive your business, how a business will survive, but how do you protect your business as you grow over time here. Anyway, so Microsoft goes on to say that the attacks are part of a huge series of attacks, as mentioned, conducted by the Nobelium group in the past few months. So from July all the way to October 19, it told its customers, 600, a little over 600 customers, there was an attempted hack of 22,000, almost 23,000 occasions. So you can just imagine, in those tries, it only takes just one incident for them to be successful. So meaning it's easier for them, but difficult for us to protect our information here, because there's a lot of leaks or plugs or loopholes, so to speak, that they can gain access to. So if we're not aware of that vulnerability, makes it easier for them. Now, even if we're aware of those vulnerabilities, what are we doing to stop those vulnerabilities so that they'll be stopped right in front of your door? Something to that effect. So meaning their success with fewer than 10 success, but still 10 success, imagine if those companies that they have attacked, let's say Walmart, Amazon, those big tech companies. You can just imagine the critical nature of its impact if, let's say, Facebook were to shut down because of the hack here. Obviously, there's a social impact in terms of connectivity online with your friends, but obviously as a business entity like Facebook, there has severe repercussions, meaning your data is not protected. So our information could be hacked, could be stolen, shared, and sold all at the same time, and no one wants that if you're in that situation, and on an individual level. So imagine in a business. So how do you protect your business here with regards to cyber attacks here? And it takes a lot of resources, knowledgeable people, and training. So it takes a lot of effort just to be able to combat those parties, and it's always evolving here. That's the scary part. So the question is, how fast can we change with those hackers, because hackers are becoming more advanced and companies are still lagging behind. So how we change or adapt will be the key to combating those cyber threats, not just currently but as well as in the future as well. Wait, what the heck was it? Okay, next. So segueing now to gaming. So we mentioned earlier, so Rockstar is planning to launch a trilogy of one of their more popular games, the GTA series or Grand Theft Auto. So they're planning to release the GTA 3. You also have Vice City and San Andreas. San Andreas I haven't played. My younger brother has played it. Looks interesting, but is it a good buy here? Now, obviously, games has been popular, recently, especially during last year when people were stuck at home looking for ways to entertain themselves, find ways to keep themselves busy, so to speak, right? So games have been on high demand for the longest time, and as you can see, for PC builders, there's a shortage of GPUs, and the prices has been still at a high price, which does not make sense for you to make an investment. But going back to gaming per se, so you have Grand Theft Auto, one of the more popular franchises here, and they're leveraging on the nostalgia of people, of gamers, of old and obviously newcomers to the industry who haven't played those games, unless you have an older console. They're leveraging on that, which is good in a sense, but I'm always looking forward to a newer version, a better version of GTA. But if there's a demand, obviously they're leveraging on that. How successful will they be? Will there be any subtle changes or differences from the original release in the previous consoles all the way to the current ones, whether it's in PS4 or in PS5? Unless they can make substantial improvements in the graphic fidelity or in terms of gameplay, I don't know if it's a worthwhile purchase here, but obviously I could be the minority here, not the majority here. So let's see here. So obviously it's going to be released not just in consoles but also in PC or desktops, right? So question here is, what are the requirements? So will you have enough juice or power to be able to play those games? So let's see, you know, will it require or will it be demanding here? So let's see here. So this is a remaster from your PS2 era, okay? So the new version of GTA will only require 2-3 gigabytes of graphic memory and a minimum of 4 gigabytes recommended. Now, obviously, you know, gigabytes of memory has increased tremendously over the past few years or decades or so. So I think it's easy enough to meet those requirements because some even ask, or the latest AAA games would ask for significantly more storage here. And then for CPU, although they would ask the usual 18 to 16, in terms of file size or storage, it will only require 45 gigabytes. Now, obviously, some games even, I think Red Dead Redemption requires at least 70, 80, or even 100 gigabytes of storage. So, you know, can be restrictive. You need a bigger storage, which could be costly, especially if you're using not just a typical optical storage drive or SATA SSD or even NVMe storage. Here could be pretty costly. But obviously, the trade-off is faster access of your data here and more reliable if it's NV.me. Anyway, so the question here is, will it be a successful venture here for GTA? And obviously, we've been looking forward to the next installment. You know, they've released Red Dead Redemption, which I haven't played, so looking forward to that in the future. Is, you know, the expectation is at an all-time high, so they need to find ways to innovate, provide a better product than what they did in their previous iterations, right? Which is, you know, a lofty expectation. But anyway, going back here, so the minimum requirement, as you can see here, you can install with the Windows 10 64-bit OS. A minimum of i5 6600K or AMD FX 6300, and you need at least 8 gigabytes of memory, graphics cards as low as 760 GTX and or an AMD Radeon R9, and then sufficient disk space is at least 45. So obviously it will not be as demanding as compared to the other AAA games here, but the point here is will be a lot of people will be excited to play those games because obviously you could play this in your older consoles or even play in emulated games or in an emulator of sorts, which I think Rockstar has been trying to claim what they call it, DMC rights over in, is it in YouTube or, yeah, I think in terms of the gaming modding community who's trying to promote the popularity in terms of, you know, what do you call this? They try to improve the game by in terms of offering not just the base game but adding modifications. That's why it's a modding community, so that people could, you know, play a longer periods of times, getting more value to the games per se. But obviously, is that considered legal or illegal? Who knows here? Now, the plan of the launch is this month, so stay tuned for that one. So we'll keep you updated with regards to, you know, will it be a big seller for many console owners for the coming holiday season. Now, me per se, I'm not looking forward per se. I might consider it in the future, but you know, even if I have I bought the game, I might not have the time to play it, so it may not be practical for me per se. But for you, if you have the time and if you haven't played it, I think, you know, it's a good purchase, and you're getting 3 games in one here. And obviously for me, I like the story component, and, you know, the gameplay is just an added bonus here. Anyway, lastly, for our last topic here, we in terms of, you know, gaming console, you know, one of the main issues that I or many have encountered, if you have a broken console here, how do you get it fixed? Now, normally you'd go to the manufacturer, whether it's Sony or Microsoft or even Nintendo, and get it fixed, right? But that's not always the case here, and then they don't have the network or service centers that could fix those problems, not just hardware and software issue, which is another issue altogether, that they would, you know, ask you to pay an exorbitant fee, which is, you know, if it's reasonable, right? But there's such a thing as asking too much. But anyway, one would normally think if you could get a third-party repair center to fix your devices or consoles, it would be within your rights since you bought that item, so you own it technically. But in terms of legality, you're not allowed to, you know, get it fixed because under the U.S. law, let's see here, that it is considered illegal. So meaning the software component, the company, the company or the manufacturer or the gaming manufacturer has the rights to that one. It's their proprietary. But my point here is, if we cannot access those schematics in terms of, let's say, software updates, or if there's a bug issue which tends to happen over time, and if it breaks the system, whose fault is it? So should we get remuneration, get paid so that we can play the game, or are we asked to buy another console so that we can play those games? Which is kind of confusing if you ask me here. But what's interesting here is the DMCA exemption now allows users to fix other types of software-enabled devices, which I think is high time here. Now, does it encompass all devices? Well, not necessarily, only gaming consoles here. So, according to the Librarian Congress, has provided a new exemption. So, the DMCA that I was talking about earlier is called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA. So, that will let people, meaning us, repair optical drives and on video game consoles. So there's still a limitation not inside the whole component device, but it focuses only on the optical drives itself. Now the new rule will also allow users to perform diagnosis, maintenance, and repair on other types of software-enabled devices. So I think there should be a understanding that once a consumer bought that item, they own it, regardless if it's the software and the hardware itself. It's not as if we have to keep on paying for that. So if the company who's selling it doesn't want to share that, then, you know, they should be held liable, because if there's a problem with that software, aren't they held liable to fix it and so forth? And if it crashes the hardware, similar to what happened to, what was that game? The New World game, right? Which was produced by Amazon, and it break EVGA's GPUs, and it's not just EVGA. Other GPU brands were bricked because of the software issues here. And shouldn't Amazon be held liable because of that? Because of their ineffective way of implementing the game, which damages the physical or the hardware component, or in this case the GPU. But anyway, one of the main issues is with, you know, companies, or in this case, you know, the gaming platforms, always using the DMCA claim that what they're doing is illegal. Now, according to a report, a petition filed last September 2020, the company iFixit, which is pro-consumer for, you know, for repair. Obviously, they sell, they're selling components to how to fix or self-repair, do self-repair for your devices here. Now, it was mentioned here, the Copyright Office recommendation is to allow consumers to repair software-enabled consumer devices and to repair optical drive on their video game consoles as a victory for consumers. Now, obviously, it's a partial victory, but not a total victory here. Now, obviously, we have to know what our rights is, especially imagine, you know, for the longest time, before our time, that if you bought an appliance, companies will not give you the schematics. If it's broken, how do you get it fixed, right? And there were, was it legislation? I forgot what was that law. I think Louis Rossmann mentioned it before, but I forgot that it was required by law that company has to provide the schematic, so that if there's any problem, either the company provide the service itself or let others service the defective product. But not the case here, especially if you combine technology here with smartphones with the likes of Apple, right? Making it difficult for people to get their devices fixed. And obviously, we've heard reports or there were reports that even Apple themselves are discouraging people from getting their devices fixed, so that they want you to buy new products and replace your old one and just throw it away. And yet they're advocating that they're trying to save our environment by being more environmentally friendly. But that's a different discussion altogether. But going back to the gaming console, I think it's about high time. And I think that coverage should expand as well, eventually in time. And the problem here is the fight to repair. Let me see here. So the right to repair is a big issue that I think a lot of people should be aware of and should be constantly discussing it, so that we put pressure on companies that are taking advantage of that loophole or are ignorant for not knowing those things. And until such time, comes to fruition, obviously, with articles, people's influencers like Louis Rossman fighting for right to repair is ongoing battle here. And according to the 1201 process is more broken than I could have imagined, according to Berg here. So device manufacturers hide behind those trade associations that fearmonger about pirating movies, games, and music copyright works that most of the locks in question do not even protect. So again, there are, how they try to skirt those issues by obviously trying to leverage what benefits the company at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, government should step in if they see that the interest of the public is not being taken care of. And there should be a penalty for companies that are doing such erroneous practices, with the likes of EA for their monopolistic, not just monopolistic, but monetization for preying on children. And not many parents know, especially if you're playing the sports FIFA, right? It's a very popular worldwide game, but EA knows that, so they leverage that so that they can try to gain every cent, every dollar that they can scheme off with those FIFA Team Ultimate packs. And then you have Activision, another terrible company with its toxic like work culture. So you could just list on several companies that leverage technology to their advantage, and then if it harms their business, they try to find ways to penalize other parties, but the companies themselves are not being penalized themselves, which is a difficult scenario to begin with. So I'm not saying it's easy, but we have to do something, or even start a discussion, so that that those companies are made aware that we know that what they're doing is not I won't say illegal, but unethical, and we are not okay with it. Well, hopefully, as we move on time, hopefully within our lifetime, significant changes could be made to improve the relationship in terms of how big companies, multi-billion companies treat their consumers here. It's as if that, they could get away with anything if they sell anything. Well, hopefully not. But anyway, so I think that concludes our discussion for this week. Anyway, if you have any question with regards to the topic that we've discussed today, I always leave the link in the description below so you can check out the full article. You can also leave your comments down below if you have any questions. Thanks again for watching. For more business news, stay here with Business Focus Live. You can also check out my other videos. I also talk about updates every Wednesdays-ish. For business updates, and check out my other contents here. We have guides, tutorials, and tips also if you're into analytics. Anyway, if you enjoyed these types of content or enjoyed watching the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Same bat time-ish, around 3 p.m. Philippine time, but always same channel here. Okay, that's it. Take care.